we won't be able to even talk about illegal migration without being called racists or bigots. Soon, I predict genuine debate about this country's migration policy will be so censored and diluted that people just won't bother to talk about it anymore. And soon, I predict that anyone who dares raise concerns about random men arriving on Britain's shores, unannounced and unidentified, will be made to pay the price by the state and its obedient society. Just look at what Labour MPs think about people who even mention the small boats. Here's Clive Lewis.
How am I far right? How am I far right?
Because of some of the stuff that you're sharing.
Like what? Give me an example. Give me an example.
You're talking about boats. You're talking about asylum seekers.
Oh, so I'm talking about something makes me far right?
No,
not it.
No.
It's not gassing the Jews. It's talking about things negatively, right?
No, not negatively. But if you talk about things which are racist, which are untrue,
what's racist?
Which are disinformation, victimising asylum seekers.
I'm not victimising them. I'm saying they're not asylum seekers.
You're talking about small boats. You're talking about asylum seekers. Well, sorry. Does it feel like slowly we're being nudged into believing that even the very conversation about the small boats crisis is something mucky that only the bold and brave dare talk about? Just earlier today, at a child's birthday party, a friend of my son's actually, one mum told me how their church service this morning, was all about condemning people who were against dinghies of migrants rocking up to Britain. She told me, as we snacked on crisps and ham sandwiches, that the congregation in church was ordered to embrace diversity and multiculturalism and open their arms to the world's needy, and anyone who objected to that was somehow ungodly. Then she finally admitted to me that she doesn't even bother talking about immigration with friends or acquaintances anymore because she has to be so careful about wrecking her life. And let me be clear, this person, this mother, wasn't someone who was ingrained daily in politics or news or government policy like, some of we are. Just a normal mum working hard to put food on the table and raise her children. She told me, and I quote, "It feels like you have to work out which people you can have that kind of conversation with or not. It's constantly treading on eggshells. If I say I'm worried about illegal migration and my family's safety in Britain, someone might go and report it to my employer or my child's school. Then we'd be finished." I'm sorry, but what a shocking indictment on the country, keeping your mouth shut to save rocking the boat. We saw how well that worked during COVID. And I never thought I'd see the day when people are scared to speak out against criminality, because the key word here is illegal migration. Illegal. Perhaps that's why our very own Prime Minister is now calling it irregular migration.
Is the way to take effective action in relation to the vile trade that sits beneath irregular migration across Europe.
But as Britain slowly turns into some authoritarian dystopia, it seems the Germans have finally had enough of their own migration headache. Because tonight, Alternative for Germany, the party, is on track to become the first right-wing party to win a regional election for the first time since the Second World War. AfD was founded in 2013 with an anti-migration and Eurosceptic agenda, and it picked up the most votes in the eastern state of Thuringia tonight, and that's according to exit polls. The party was on course for 33.5% of the vote compared to the 23.4% it picked up in the 2019 election. And to me, that signals a vast change in attitudes to migration in Germany over the course of just a few years. So, good luck, Britain. We need it. But let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Political commentator Chloe Dobbs, former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood, and former Labour special advisor Paul Richards. Good evening, panel.
Hello. Good evening.
Happy Sunday. We've made it through another week. Chloe, do you think I'm talking claptrap when I say that I fear and predict that soon, and I think in a number of years, not too far away, that even the idea of a conversation about illegal migration, all the small boats, will be met with a wall of silence and condemnation?
I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and we need to be ringing the warning bells now before this goes any further, because I think there's the risk that everyone thinks, oh, we're not Iran, we're so far away from that, we're never going to end up in the position where we're a totalitarian state. But we're clearly on the path towards it, and in fact, Keir Starmer seems to be moving far faster than I expected. I expected a lot of scary policies to come out of his government, but I thought he would sort of ease us in over a few years. But, just after a few weeks in power, and it seems like we're living in 1984.
Theo, irregular migration, what's that about?
So they've changed the language. Actually, it wasn't Keir Starmer's government that changed it. It actually changed in the last days of the Conservative government. They changed that terminology. Ben, it wasn't...
There we go. I mean, if that is a fact, and I'm sure it is, because you're clued up, Theo, it just goes to show the uni party in full force. Is there much difference between the Tories and Labour?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, they changed it, and obviously they changed it for a reason. You can make
What's the reasons, you reckon?
Well, the reasons, I think, is that I think there's a move, certainly within the government, to try and tone down the rhetoric. And you can have a counter-argument to that and say we need to be much more upfront in the rhetoric. But I think there's a feeling that if you tone down the rhetoric, then it becomes less inflammatory, and it's possible to have a more reasoned debate. What I would say, as I think it's very important that when you're dealing with the small boats crisis, that we reach a point at which the numbers drop, because we're talking about a vile trade in human beings here. We're talking about people risking their lives, paying criminals £2,500 a person to get into a boat and cross the channel, often overcrowded, and these are people who are in mortal danger when they are doing so. And it needs to stop, and we need to be upfront about the fact that it needs to stop. And I think if I were to say one thing about just the debate in general, if we can't have the debate and if pressure through legitimate means can't be put in place, whether it comes from opposition parties onto a government or in the media, because we have free speech in this country, if it can't be used through, as I said, legitimate means to put pressure on the government, whether it be questions in the House of Commons or wherever, then that wouldn't necessarily bring about the desired outcome of reducing the number of people crossing the English Channel.
OK. Well, Paul, that clip of Clive Lewis there, you saw it. What do you make of his assertion that even talking about the small boats or asylum seekers is somehow, far right?
Well, we do have free speech in this country, and we're endlessly debating these issues. We've been we do, and we've been debating immigration and asylum for decades. Since Enoch Powell. In the 60s, we've been talking about this issue. So the idea that somehow we're not allowed to talk about it is not true.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I just pick up? You say we have free speech in this country, but we've just had dozens of people banged up in prison for writing social media posts. I mean, is that...
Well, free speech has limitations and always had.
So it's not free speech, then?
You don't have limitless
If it's conditional, it's not free speech.
You can't say whatever you like about anybody you like any of the time, even on GBNews. We have libel laws. We have laws that say you can't walk into a crowded theatre and shout fire. There are limitations to our free speech, but we can debate an issue like immigration, as we have done all of my life, freely.
But I think the only limitation that there should be is if you explicitly incite violence, right? Whereas we're seeing people being banged up, put behind bars because they've expressed an opinion, maybe very controversial,
it's
maybe
not an opinion,
quite
it's
rude,
spreading hate and spreading lies, and that should be against the law as well.
That's not free
That's not
speech.
opinions.
If you want to say something hateful, that's not very nice.
We've just had a summer of rioting caused by people telling lies on social media.
No.
And social media should not be immune from this. It's not an invisibility cloak.
That's looking very short-term. The reason behind the riots is because you've got so many people who feel like they have not been listened to in this country. I
think what I remember, and I remember speaking to Lord Warney, who was doing an interview with him. He's the independent advisor on political extremism and violence. And what he was saying, which I thought was very interesting, was that you had pockets where groups on the far right were using private messaging services, social media to spread misinformation, to get gatherings in and pockets of demonstrations, if you want to call those in areas, and then people from the area were latching onto it and going to those riots.
We've gone down a slightly different path, but those rumoured 100 riots on Telegram that were organised turned out to be a complete hoax. So
I'm talking about before. That. I take your point on that. I'm not disputing your point, Ben, for one moment on that. What I'm saying is before, in the lead up to that, because of course that Wednesday evening, when they didn't transpire, was actually when the violence ceased, and actually then we had a
Let me ask you about this conversation I had with this mum at my kid's birthday party today. So we're all there, the Bounty Castle's out, we're eating, jam roly-polies and party rings or whatever. And she said to me, she said, I've been to church this morning and the clergy was talking about how we should welcome small boat migrants with open arms. It's ungodly not to question why they're coming or whether there's too many of them. And then she said, to be honest, Ben, quite frankly, and she's just a normal person. She doesn't watch the news every day. She doesn't know anything about governments, really, or policy or, news channels. And she said, I just feel like I can't have that conversation anymore. And that, to me, is quite chilling, actually, that people are afraid to even speak up now and raise legitimate concerns about things happening to our country without being cancelled.
She shouldn't be surprised to get the sort of love thy neighbour message from a Christian church on a Sunday morning. I mean, that's less surprising than perhaps you should think. That is the basic essence of Christianity.
I don't think it's very godly encouraging people to come on packed dinghies and cross the busiest shipping lane in the world. That doesn't sound very.
No, but a lot of the Christian charities are the ones who are providing the support services for the people when they've arrived as refugees. But the bigger question was, not being able to debate this with her friends and neighbours. I always just wonder what that mum wants to say out loud that she thinks that she can't. And if it's something that would be so outrageous, maybe she wants to have a little word with herself about why that would be.
No, she wanted to say, her point was, as I said, she doesn't know too much about the situation of the small boats and the government policy and why it's happening. She simply wanted to raise concerns that there's undocumented, unknown people come into this country who throw their mobile phones into the water, throw their passports. We don't know who they are or where they're from. Surely, normal people are allowed to say, hang on a minute, something a bit fishy's going on over there. What's going on?
We were debating it. We debated it through the election campaign. It was one of Labour's central pledges, all about stopping the boats. This was all...
You say that, Paul, but I've just showed you a clip of Clive Lewis saying, you're talking about small boats, and then another clip of Starmer now calling it irregular migration, as if, changing the language is going to somehow...
Well, I think Theo's point is a good one, which you do need to take the heat out of this debate, and words do matter in this regard. So I think we do need to have a rational, calm debate about immigration policy and refugee and asylum policy.
Just very quickly, look, if Clive Lewis, you were to invite Clive Lewis onto this programme and you sit down with him, Ben, and say, I want to do an interview.
I'd love it. Clive, please come on. The invitation is there.
And if he turns around and you're going through, you're talking about the winter fuel allowance, you're talking about Labour policies on left, whatever it might be, and you said, right, Clive, I'd like now to talk about immigration. He said, no, we're not going to do that. Or I think, Ben, actually, no, we're just not going to have this debate the way you want me to have it, the way you want to have it. Then I think there'll be a problem. He's been confronted with a camera phone outside a hall, I think, in his constituency.
Yeah.
And if you go through, look, I don't want to turn this into a sort of personal thing, but when you look at the individual involved, who this individual was, I think Clive Lewis didn't. He spoke about the issue of small boats, but I think he was making a broader point in there, and he can speak for himself about the individual who was confronting.
Yeah, it was this group called Students Against Tyranny. They seem to be connected to Turning Point UK, and they do all sorts of stuff. But OK.
It was a stunt, wasn't it? Let's face it. It wasn't just a genuine bit of discourse between two citizens. It was a stunt to get hits on social media. Let's face it.
Yeah. OK. Well, I think MPs should still be, held to account in public. I mean, I've done plenty of doorsteps in my time, and I think it's a good thing for the public to hold MPs to account, no doubt. Panel, thank you very much. Great start. You'll be back very shortly. But coming up next, businessman and entrepreneur Mike Green goes head-to-head with former Labour Party advisor James Mathewson, asking whether Britain really needs its super wealthy. Sparks are guaranteed to fly. We'll see you in 3 short minutes. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Is it time that we actually stop paying for royal security full stop? Is it right that taxpayers fund the security of everyone from Queen Camilla to Prince William? Because there's lots of commentary that perhaps Prince Andrew having his security removed is sort of a first step towards trying to get him out of Royal Lodge.
Well, I mean, that's what King Charles is hoping to try and do, is to sort of try and subtly strong-arm him out of Royal Lodge and into another property, which happens to be Harry and Meghan's old house, Frogmore Cottage. He's resisting, shall we say, any attempts by the King to actually go of his own accord. He says he signed a lease. He said the lease is cast iron, and that's where he's staying. So the King says, OK, he's taken away his security. He believes he doesn't need to have this round-the-clock 24-hour protection. The only security, really, that the taxpayer should be paying for, the King believes, is just himself, Queen Camilla, and the Prince and Princess of Wales, because obviously they are the heirs.
But they are billionaires, aren't they? I mean, they could afford... Isn't Prince William a billionaire? He could afford his own security. Is there a legitimate question about whether or not the British taxpayer should be... But the only reason I ask is because, you look at what Harry and Meghan are up to. They've just been to Colombia, presumably footed the bill themselves, or maybe Colombia did.
I think Colombia invited them.
OK. They ended up, well, Prince Harry, shall I say, ended up costing us, the taxpayer, over $1 million in Home Office legal fees with that silly case that he brought, demanding that we do pay for police protection for him. So, I mean, he's not a good example. But do they deserve it? Yes, of course they do. It's the King, and they generate, 80% of the income that they generate goes back into our coffers, goes back into the Treasury.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Now, does Britain really need its highest earners? It's time for our head-to-head. Yes, and according to the Daily Telegraph's front page today, Britain's top earners are already fleeing the country in fear of potential tax raids in Rachel Reeves' autumn budget. Bankers, financial advisors and business chiefs are reporting a mass exodus of wealthy clients and entrepreneurs to the likes of Italy, Dubai and Switzerland. Labour's election victory and repeated warnings of a fiscal black hole have apparently pushed Britain's highest earners to get out of the country before the autumn budget is announced, with tax rises, including those to capital gains tax, widely expected. But as Keir Starmer warns that those with the broadest shoulders will be forced to carry the burden of plugging our fiscal gap, does Britain really need its highest earners? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at GBNews. And while you're there, vote in our poll too. But first, going head-to-head on this tonight, our businessman and entrepreneur Mike Green and former Labour Party advisor James Mathewson. Good evening to you both. Thank you for joining me. James, I'll start with you. Why should people who have gambled their money, risked investments on, well, using money that's already been taxed, by the way, on, say, stocks, shares, housing, why should the state and the government then come along and take a massive chunk of that? And if Labour do indeed increase capital gains tax from 20% to 45%, why should anyone stick around?
That's an interesting question, isn't it? And I think it comes down to the core of our society as a whole and how we want to run our country. And it's long been acknowledged that those who have successes, and, you know, I acknowledge that entrepreneurs have successes of their own merits. They've made gambles, they've taken risks that have paid off, and that, you know, it's not an easy life and it's not an easy option. It often yields not really great results for lots of people. So those that it does pay off for, it's fantastic. But they wouldn't be able to do so. It wouldn't be possible without the wider framework of our system as a whole, as a country. And if you're based in a country, you pay into that system, you take pride in that system, and you acknowledge that this system, whilst, you know, you're going to pay more than people who have less than you, then you do so out of pride and out of respect. And we all know that if we were to make that money and to have a huge success, that we would also do the same. And there's a sense of pride in that and a sense of community. So I do not believe for 1 minute, because we hear this, by the way, in every single country. We talk about the countries they're thinking about fleeing to, these supposed people. Those countries have exactly the same headlines and articles every time there is a threatened tax rise on capital gains or any other similar tax. So for me, I don't believe it. I don't believe that we're going to see a mass exodus. We never do. It's just threats. It's words, it's not actions.
Well, and James,
it's understandable because that sector is protecting itself from those taxes, but ultimately, they do have the broader shoulders.
OK, Mike, I'll just bring you in just 2 seconds. But James, just to add, there was a report from a private equity firm a few months back saying that Britain is losing the most millionaires en masse, second only to China in the world. So I don't think you're quite right on that one.
I know, but the thing is, Ben, it's from a private equity firm, and I just do not believe it.
Well, they're the ones with the money.
Practice, Mike? You know, these are the people who are invested in that money.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's not just rumour, it's not just speculation. I can tell you now, Alfie Best has been driven to Monaco, Charlie Mullins to Marbella. These are people who bring hundreds of millions of pounds in taxation in different ways to the UK economy. I know a friend who set up a great and very successful growing tax business in Dubai, telling people how they can go there and get away with 0 or 1% tax. All of my life, I've said you should pay the taxes in the country that you live in. You should be willing to support the economy that supports you. For the first time in my life, I've been talking to people about changing that, about taking assets, taking businesses and taking employees out of this country, because already the top 1% pay over 30% of the tax revenues. The top 10% pay over 60% of the tax revenues. This is proper tall poppy syndrome. Cut the tallest poppies down to make the rest feel good. Do we really not believe that if we lose those highest taxpayers, that the lowest are going to be burdened with more tax? Yeah. Wake up. That's just a signpost, political, vote-winning BS, if I can be really honest.
James, can I ask you, say you went into the bookies, right, and you put a tenner on the Grand National at 10 to 1, and you happened to win. You won, you won some money. And then I came in a few minutes after the race, and I swiped 40% of it. Would you be happy with that?
I mean, that's a ridiculous analogy, man.
Why?
Because if you said to me, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to provide healthcare, I'm going to provide education, I'm going to provide all of these things.
Well, no, I take the money from you and I say, James, I'm going to take my kids to Nando's tonight.
Ben, you're not taking money from me. Tax is about contributions. Mike's welcome to leave. You know, everyone's welcome to leave. You can leave the country, you can go and live somewhere else. That's fine. You're allowed to do that. And people do that, as he's pointed out. However, it's not very patriotic, is it? Where's the patriot in you?
Well,
where's the sense of pride in Britain and this country?
Give me a reason to stay. If you could say, Mike, you have to pay a bit more. Bear in mind, the people earning over 150 grand are already paying 45%. I can go to the US on 37 on the top earners. I can go to Singapore on 22. I can go to Hong Kong on 17%. And you know what? They're opening their arms to us. But give me a good reason to stay. Our housing is to pot. Our roads and rail are to pot. Our health is to pot. Our education is embarrassing. And our politics is broken. Why should I want to stay at the moment?
And the sun doesn't even shine. The sun doesn't even shine. What's the point?
Goodness, honestly, gentlemen, we're talking down Britain here. That's what you're doing on GB News tonight. You are talking down this country, and you are saying that why should you stay here? Because it's all to do with money and it's all to do with tax. Where's your pride in being British? Where's your pride
I'm happy to pay my taxes.
Sense of community and things that are in this country other than finances?
We're driving people out. What I'd say is, why don't we do exactly the opposite? Why don't we become a low-tax economy and attract more investment, attract more businesses, attract more intelligent people to this country? Instead of saying, you know what, these people, these are our golden geese. They're laying us golden eggs. They're creating jobs. The entrepreneurs you talk about already account for 99.9% of all businesses, by the way, and 66% of all employment. But no, we're going to drive them away.
Last word to you,
so
James.
what's going to happen ultimately? How can it not end up in the poorest paying more money? I'm not about charging the poor more. I'm about being realistic about the tax revenues that currently come into the central government
What
coffers.
you're essentially advocating for is that there is a limit, and that you say that when unfortunately that limit is reached, that you can throw your toys out the pram and say, I'm going. Otherwise, you do it my way or you take the highway. Now, being held hostage like that, how can a country be held hostage by people saying, I'm not going to pay tax unless you set where I want it to be? Okay. The average person doesn't have the luxury.
It's about being fair and reasonable, James.
Yeah.
It's about 45% is already a lot.
We're running out of time. Thank you both. Fascinating debate. And James, I will just add at the end, you know, people are happy to contribute towards the NHS and, you know, the upkeep of the country. But I think people with money also accept the fact they're not going to be fleeced, especially at a time when it was revealed yesterday 1.6 million migrants aren't working, costing the taxpayer £8 billion a year. If the government's got a good track record of spending that tax money wisely and properly, I think they'd be a lot more welcoming to paying more tax. But there we go. Thank you both for joining us.
Welcome to leave.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much. So what do you think at home? According to reports, the wealthy are set to flee Britain. Does the UK really need its highest earners? Beadle on X says the burden of taxation always falls on those least able to afford it. Those who can can always leave. John, on X, you say the highest earners tend to be the risk takers who put everything on the line to create wealth, and in doing so create wealth and employment for others. Hear, hear. I agree with you. And Dennis on X says this government will run this country into the ground. There we go. Your verdict is now in. 91% of you agree the UK really does need its highest earners. Well, 9% of you say no, it doesn't. Off you pop to the UAE. Right, up next, after the bodies of 6 Israeli hostages murdered by Hamas are identified, is now the time for Israel to follow Keir Starmer's advice and agree an immediate ceasefire. Tonight's panel gets stuck into that next. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. It stays unsettled over the next 24 hours or so. The risk of heavy showers and thunderstorms staying rather cloudy and particularly humid as well. Low pressure in charge of our weather pattern at the moment. Slow moving areas of rain across the country. However, this area of high pressure just starts to introduce some fresher air as we move through into the beginning of next week. This evening time we do have areas of showers and thunderstorms pushing north across England and Wales into southern parts of Scotland. Band of rain also starts to move in from the Atlantic to affect parts of Northern Ireland. Humid tonight, warm as well with a lot of cloud cover, temperatures in the mid to high teens. Uncomfortable for sleeping for some of us. So on Monday morning, an unsettled start to the new working week. Areas of showers pushing northwards across parts of Scotland. Some of this could lead to some local disruption first thing. Cloudy across Northern Ireland, showery outbreaks of rain here, which also extends into parts of northern England, North Wales. Some thunderstorms around. A lot of cloud, humid start to the day. Further showers and thunderstorms in places too across the rest of England and Wales. Through the day, what we'll see is it generally stays cloudy across most areas. There will be some bright or sunny spells in between, but we do have lots of bands of rain and showers pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some of this will be heavy and thundery. Could see some local disruption. Temperatures a little lower, particularly in the southeast, 25 degrees, but still rather humid for many of us. And into the evening and overnight, those showers continue. Fresher air starts to move in from the west on Tuesday, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers most frequent the further north and west you are. Here's some of them heavy. Best of the drier, brighter weather will be further south and east, and temperatures just a little lower once more. Generally dry for Wednesday ahead of further showery rain pushing in for Thursday. See you soon.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Welcome back. Now, Israel's entire economy apparently is set to strike tomorrow in a bid to encourage Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a deal to return hostages and agree to the terms of a Gaza ceasefire. It comes as the bodies of 6 Israeli hostages were found dead in a tunnel in Gaza, and it's been revealed that at least 3 of the hostages shot were due to be released pretty soon in a prisoner exchange between Israel and Hamas. So Keir Starmer has called for an immediate ceasefire deal earlier today, describing the killings as horrific and senseless. Joining me now is my panel, political commentator Chloe Dobbs, former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood, and former Labour special advisor and columnist Paul Richards. Chloe, this is, such a contentious issue, isn't it, the Middle East? So much going on, but tonight, these scenes from Israel, from Tel Aviv, other cities, it seems Israeli citizens now are turning their backs on Netanyahu and demanding he, quite frankly, gets a rocket up his backside and sorts a ceasefire deal out.
Yeah, I mean, this is a rapidly changing situation. We'll see what happens. I think that there's a good chance that Netanyahu will be toppled I don't know who he'll be replaced by. I'm no expert on their politics. I think it is a very difficult situation. I think it's wrong to suggest that if you don't agree to a ceasefire, it's because you hate all the hostages and you don't care. I think it's whatever happens, whether we end up with a ceasefire or not, I think the key thing is that it's done in a way such that we at least can feel that October 7th isn't going to happen again. Hamas are very clear that they would repeat it again, and that in their documents that they don't want Israel to exist, they want it off the map, and the ideology there is so ingrained. So obviously there's the argument that we have to keep fighting there until all of the Hamas leaders are gone. But then, I mean, you see videos of the way the children have been taught there and what the children say they're taught in schools. They indoctrinate the children from such a young age. They do exactly what ISIS do, where they really try and pass that ideology down generations. So it's very, very hard to extinguish their ideology. It's such a hard situation.
I happened to come across this account on X last night on the way home, and it was all dedicated to October the 7th, and videos I'd never seen before, CCTV of Hamas fighters murdering Israelis, all sorts of graphic stuff I'd never seen before. And really, it shocked me to my core, some of the stuff I saw from that day. And the argument is, Theo, why should Netanyahu agree a ceasefire deal until... Well, primarily, since they've just shot 6 hostages dead.
I was speaking to a guy called Steve Brisley, whose brother, he's based in South Wales, and his brother-in-law is one of the hostages that was kidnapped by Hamas. And I paraphrase, so I want to be careful to make sure I get the gist of what Steve said. But if I remember correctly, his argument was that Hamas is a terrorist organisation. It will continue to do what it does, but that actually Netanyahu should have found a way to have reached some sort of deal in the short term to bring the hostages home. And then Hamas would, because of what it is inevitably going to, commit or try to commit some further atrocity, and Israel needs to be ready to defend that and to defend that with strength. But actually, in the short term, there was some merit in Netanyahu just saying, right, let's agree to something that gets the hostages home. And the real tragedy in all of this now is we're 11 months on, is that actually this is played out in the most horrific way, to the point at which most of the hostages are confirmed dead, and it is very likely that even more have been murdered by Hamas, and that actually there are very few left alive, still being held following their kidnapping on October the 7th. And it seems as if there is no impasse within the Israeli political system that would allow any sort of deal, just even if it's for a few days, to get that deal over the line.
I think, unless I misread it earlier, I think Netanyahu's own defence minister tonight is calling for him to go, I guess. And the water cannons, I'm hearing as well, are out on the streets of Tel Aviv. Israel's own government and the police force using water cannons to disperse protesters who are calling for Netanyahu to go tonight, Paul.
Well, it's a reminder that Israel is a very vibrant democracy, is the only democracy in the Middle East, and it's a place where political ideas are debated out through the Knesset, through this kind of street activity on every street corner. Every time I've been to Israel, there's a debate going on, there's a democracy being forged, and that stands in stark contrast, of course, with what's going on with Hamas, who don't believe in that. And this is not a war about territory; it's a war about ideas.
Yeah.
And the idea here is that this is the only democracy, and Hamas want to destroy it.
It was interesting, Chloe. Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, he tweeted first thing this morning about these hostages, and I was thinking, well, closer to home, I haven't seen him once mention the deaths at Notting Hill Carnival. The poor mum whose 3-year-old daughter saw her get knifed to death. And then the other chap, the chef, who's based in Dubai, I think he's British, who also leaves behind an 8-year-old son. I've not heard a peep from Starmer about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that politicians are so scared to talk about Notting Hill Carnival and to shut it down or move it to somewhere else, which clearly needs to happen.
Paul's shaking his head.
I mean, if this kind of violence happened at any other event, it would be shut down. But I think that because it's considered like a cultural event, with any people of colour, they are very concerned to talk about it.
Paul, what's irked you about Chloe's comments there?
Well,
they don't want to be called racist if they shut down the Notting Hill Carnival.
People come after the carnival every year and try and close it down. And, you know, wherever you get large crowds, I'm afraid you do get trouble. And that's true of the World Cup final. It's true of, you know, any kind of big event.
Do you get loads of stabbings at the World Cup
you don't
music festivals?
There are not loads of stabbings.
You don't get fatal stabbings at any World Cup final.
I mean, I couldn't believe some of the reporting on the Notting Hill Carnival saying, oh, it's been a largely lovely and peaceful family day, only a few stabbings. I mean, there shouldn't be any stabbings.
What's quite interesting just about, because the Metropolitan Police did like a tweet, didn't they, where they detailed a running update. And there are crimes there, and I'm not for one moment condoning the crimes being committed or trying to excuse them or pass. But what I do think was quite interesting, and the Metropolitan Police, I don't think actually have taken credit for this, is they seem to have used the Notting Hill Carnival, from what I've looked at, and if you look at just the sheer number of seizures, as an active operation to go and actually proactively find whether it be offensive weapons or drugs or whatever it might be, and actually seize them off people and actually do some proper policing. Yeah. And I think actually fair play to the Met on this. OK, the crimes are being committed, and I'm not trying to one moment distract from that, but actually, if you look at the detail within those updates provided on X by the Metropolitan Police, it does seem that Sir Mark Rowley has got his officers in gear and told them, actually, go into this, you know, gathering of millions of people in West London and actually use it as an opportunity to find the things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to find.
I think I recall the tweet from the Met. They said because there had been a stabbing or there had been a knife seized, I can't remember, they were able to issue some sort of order which allowed them basically to do stop and search.
I think it's Section 60, but correct me if I apologise if I've got that wrong.
They could basically do stop and search without permission, which really, Paul, we should be doing that anyway. Do you not think?
Well, there's a different argument, isn't there, about stop and search and how it is used, and we know it has sometimes been used disproportionately on certain communities. But the point is, the carnival is a great thing. Yes, it's, you know, in the wrong place in the sense that these are crowded streets, but that is the history of it. We've had a long history in this country of street festivals and carnivals and people getting together, and there's no way it should be moved to Hyde Park or some nonsense like that. How many belongs in Notting Hill.
How many deaths is too many, Paul?
Well, like I say, these terrible things are happening in large gatherings all the time, all over the place. It's not unique to Notting Hill.
Okie doke. Great stuff. You'll be joining me back in the next hour or so with all the newspapers. But up next, with Prince Harry reportedly plotting a return from his self-imposed exile to the US and also lining up a future career as a life coach. Yes, you heard that right. There's plenty for leading royal biographer Angela Levin to get her journalistic teeth stuck into. She's live in the studio next. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Soya, almond, oats, hazelnut, coconut milk.
Yeah.
It's now much more difficult to choose.
Yeah, there's an awful lot out there on the market. So how do you feel about horse milk? Yes, you heard that right. For generations, people in Central Asia have sworn by horse milk and the supposed health benefits. And now researchers in Poland believe it should even be used in ice cream. For the sweet treat not only tastes delicious, apparently, but could also be good for your gut.
OK, well, joining us now to give us the lowdown on why we should be considering switching over to horse milk is farmer Frank Shellard from Cromwell Farm, Britain's only horse dairy. Good morning, Frank. Look, you're an expert on all things milk. You've even written a book on it. Is horse milk good for you? How does it compare nutritionally, first of all, to cow's milk?
I think the big difference is, just to make the point from the very start, cows, sheep and goats and all those other alternative milks have got 4 stomachs. Horse has got a single stomach, so a lot of the enzymes and a lot of the makeup of the milk is very similar to mother's milk. So our bodies are a lot more able, us being a single stomach animal, if you like, to digest that milk. So that's the big thing. That's the first point I'd like to make. Because of the makeup of the mare's milk, you could drink the lactose and the lactase in it. You could probably, not all, don't quote with everybody, but a big percentage of those people that are lactose intolerant could drink the mare's milk. The great thing about the mare's milk is it's very, very good for your gut flora. If you remember in the history books, Cleopatra bathed in ass's milk, and ass's milk is exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same makeup as mare's milk, and she bathed in it for eternal youth and to keep the skin and her metabolism correct.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News. And of course, top royal author Angela Levin joins me now for her reaction to that bombshell Mail on Sunday story today that Prince Harry is reportedly plotting a move back to the UK. Angela Levin, good evening.
Hello.
I'm sinking in my chair as I speak to you. Apologies. These chairs are quite problematic. Look, listen, massive story. I saw this last night in the paper review on my show and I thought, yes, you know, massive showbiz, royal scoop, finally something to kind of mimic the Megxit revelations years ago. Not quite there, but pretty big still.
I think it's even worse, actually, because I think this is cunning. And I think he's going to all these friends of his who he was at school with, plus one aide only, to ask him to try and get him back within the royal family. Now, how old is he? He's 40 in a couple of weeks. How does he need... It's not a baby. If he wants to go to speak to his father and understands that he's very busy and he has a lot of cancer problems to get sorted out, he can say, look, I'm really sorry. Can we start somewhere? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But he doesn't want to say he's sorry. He wants to get money and he wants to get apologies, especially from William, about how they allegedly treated Meghan. Now, the thing is this just Harry who wants to come, or is it Meghan? I can assure you Meghan doesn't want to come. She hates this country, and she's sort of got her own life now. So how is that going to work? The idea is he does 6 months here and 6 months in America. Now, the Queen, who he adored, she was very clear that that doesn't work at all and it's not going to happen. So what's going to happen? What is it? He's going to sort of slither in like a snake.
Well, do you not think his father, the King, you know, he's been estranged pretty much from Harry for years now. He rarely sees his grandchildren. Do you not think he'll be more sympathetic than the late Queen and say, yeah, you know, son, if you want to do 6 months here, 6 months there with Meghan, we can sort that out?
No, I don't think he'll be like that at all. I think he's learnt now to carry on with his own work and not to be distracted by Harry's demands. And also, you know, if he does, he'll use what he says he sees in the royal family and what he hears for getting money. This is the way is the half and half. At TV or journalists.
But the Sussex squad, Angela, would say Harry just misses his friends, he misses his home, he misses his military ties. You know, he just wants to come back home. Well, can we not just welcome him back with open arms?
Who did that? He doesn't want to be here. He's actually, one of the things he's really keen of, and he's going back for the third time to the court, is to get this top-class protection, right? I think this is another way of getting that, because if he comes here, he wants to have that.
Yeah.
And that is only for people who are working very hard at the top, the King and Queen and the heirs to the throne. So it's all nonsense. It's all a... it's a very good PR.
OK, Angela, tell me about this other stunning revelation today, that Prince Harry is becoming a life coach. I mean, to me, it sounds like getting relationship advice from a 5-time divorcee, but
yeah,
what's he up to?
Well, he's worked with Better Up, which is a mental health charity, and he's worked that up for a bit and got some money out of that, nearly £1 million. And he's been offered to have his own online university. So he will be in charge of this for people. He's got got no qualifications. He got a D in A-level geography and a B in art.
Yeah.
And also, he's not recovered himself. If you'd seen him in Colombia, he looked dreadful. He looked as if he wasn't actually there. He looked miserable and unhappy and very, very damaged. So you can't have somebody who hasn't actually got over their old problems, I think, to teaching other people.
Good point. But again, playing devil's advocate, some would say, oh, Harry's been through the tragic death of his mother. He's gone through family rifts. He's gone through a very unique experience as a royal and moving abroad. I mean, some would say that he has got a decent amount of life experience, even so that he, you know, hasn't really dealt with his own issues.
Exactly that. He's got lots of experience, but he hasn't dealt with it yet. So actually, you can't pass that on to people. If you want to teach people and let them know what's going on, you have to be positive and upbeat. It's no good saying, the last 4 years I've been, you know, missing this, that and the other, and I can't get over it, and I cry at night. It's not going to help them, is it?
It's kind of like that old phrase, you can't, what is it, you need to love yourself before you learn to love yourself before you can love other people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spot on.
What's this about Lady Louise?
This is lovely.
Windsor?
Lady Louise Windsor, the daughter of the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, she wants to go into the army. Now, she loves it. She's at college at the moment, and she's a royal cadet, and she likes it so much that she wants to go into the army and work for the king and country.
Wow. How old is she, Lady Louise?
20.
Would she be the first female royal?
Since the Queen. She'll be since the Queen. The Queen went in just before the end of the war.
Do you think the Queen would approve of this? She'd probably be delighted,
I think she'd be delighted.
Yeah.
She adored her anyway. They were very close. She often went to her to church, and she would go around and see her most Saturdays. And they were very close. And the Duke of Edinburgh loved her as well. And she, of course, used to do all this carriage driving, which he adored.
So she's the daughter to Prince Edward, is that right? Have I got my...
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, that's right.
OK.
He's a Duke and Duchess now. That's the youngest of her 4 children. And he is the youngest, and she's the daughter to him.
Right, got it. And apparently she's fallen in love with the role.
Yes.
With military life.
Yes, she's fallen in love with it, and she wants to do it. And I think that's amazing, because it's so different from any of the other royals. And she loves horses, and she'll probably do something with a horse. She won't be out on the front of the first line like Harry wanted to do when he went away for war.
She won't be piloting Apaches in Afghanistan or Ukraine?
No, nothing like that.
No.
But I think it's a lovely thing to do, to continue what the Queen did as a female way back in the Second World War.
Yeah, I think it's great. A really nice, upbeat royal story for once instead of...
I'd add that to the end.
Yeah, very, very nice. Look, Angela, it was my birthday on Wednesday. You just very sweetly gave me a card. Bless you. Bless your heart. But it's also Prince Harry's birthday, as you mentioned. In what date is it? It's a week or 2.
Yes.
What's Meghan doing? Apparently she's organising some sort of big birthday bash. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't. But I think that any birthday bash would be really about Meghan, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be about Harry. I think these things are very difficult, and we don't know if he's back yet and what it will be.
I'm being told by the voice in my head that apparently it's a bash organised by Meghan's celebrity A-list Hollywood pals, which kind of sounds like the life he wants to escape from, if the Mail on Sundays to be...
He doesn't like that sort of thing. He absolutely doesn't. He doesn't want to be a celebrity. It's never been his aim. And so Meghan's going to make him a big party. But I think, if you're 40, but a lot of people think that's a very important part of your life. And by that time, you should know really where you want to go. And maybe he's just suddenly woken up to where he wants to go, and that's back here, and maybe leave her in America.
America, yeah. Amazing, fascinating. I know lots of our viewers are sort of hit and miss with Harry and Meghan. I think they love to hate them half the time.
Yes.
But we should remember that Harry has done a lot for the country before he met Meghan. He served in the military and so on. So there is, a special.
I think when he was in Colombia and he saw what they were doing, it was so awful that it reminded him that this is not the sort of life he really wanted.
Yeah.
He remembered when he behaved properly.
Yeah.
But actually, to see that was going on and it wasn't correctly done.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he looks so miserable.
OK. Angela Levin, thank you so much for joining me. Mark's back next week, so unfortunately I won't be here. But thank you for the last couple of weeks. Really loved having the company. Lots to come in the next hour, including warnings that the government is stopping testing kids in classrooms on times tables to avoid triggering anxiety. I think they've lost their minds. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Back in a tick.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. It stays unsettled over the next 24 hours or so. The risk of heavy showers and thunderstorms staying rather cloudy and particularly humid as well. Low pressure in charge of our weather pattern at the moment. Slow moving areas of rain across the country. However, this area of high pressure just starts to introduce some fresher air as we move through into the beginning of next week. This evening time we do have areas of showers and thunderstorms pushing north across England and Wales into southern parts of Scotland. Band of rain also starts to move in from the Atlantic to affect parts of Northern Ireland. Humid tonight, warm as well with a lot of cloud cover, temperatures in the mid to high teens. Uncomfortable for sleeping for some of us. So on Monday morning, an unsettled start to the new working week. Areas of showers pushing northwards across parts of Scotland. Some of this could lead to some local disruption first thing. Cloudy across Northern Ireland, showery outbreaks of rain here, which also extends into parts of northern England, North Wales. Some thunderstorms around, a lot of cloud, humid start to the day. Further showers and thunderstorms in places too across the rest of England and Wales. Through the day, what we'll see is it generally stays cloudy across most areas. There will be some bright or sunny spells in between, but we do have lots of bands of rain and showers pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some of this will be heavy and thundery. Could see some local disruption. Temperatures a little lower, particularly in the southeast, 25 degrees, but still rather humid for many of us. And into the evening and overnight, those showers continue. Fresher air starts to move in from the west on Tuesday, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers most frequent the further north and west you are. Here's some of them heavy. Best of the drier, brighter weather will be further south and east, and temperatures just a little lower once more. Generally dry for Wednesday ahead of further showery rain pushing in for Thursday. See you soon.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your chance to...
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs Live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Ben Leo Tonight. Militant teaching unions are demanding schools stop testing children on their times tables and grammar. Do you have faith in British education anymore? And we're banging up social media users and releasing serious criminals early. But next, we could be sending prisoners to, get this, Estonia. Anne Widdecombe joins me shortly on that. And
some of them do eventually realize it, thank God, is that is actually a path to misery.
Whoops, Donald Trump's running mate in hot water again for comments over choosing women choosing careers rather over their children. And elsewhere in North America, look what's been happening in Canada.
The 25% tariffs we just brought in on Chinese steel is going to help you out.
That's going to keep my job, yeah. What about the 40% taxes I'm paying?
I'm joined by political commentator Chloe Dobbs, former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood, and the former Labour special advisor Paul Richards. And somebody's mad auntie is on the loose.
No such thing as the free press anymore.
Schools are becoming government indoctrination camps. Next.
Good evening, it's 10 o'clock. I'm Will Hollis in the GB News newsroom. Protests in Israel first, as thousands of people in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem fill the streets after the killing of 6 hostages in Gaza. Protesters blocked roads while police used water cannons to disperse crowds. IDF soldiers recovered the bodies of the hostages, who Israel says were killed moments before troops reached them. The Hostages Families Forum, which represents relatives of those held in Gaza, blamed the deaths on Prime Minister Netanyahu's failure to secure a deal with Hamas. Back in the UK, the leader of the SNP has been speaking on the final day of the party's conference in Edinburgh. The keynote speech by Scotland's First Minister, John Swinney, who took over the party from Humza Yousaf in May, highlighted getting a ceasefire in Gaza as a priority.
I was one of the first and remains a leading voice demanding an immediate ceasefire and the return safely of all hostages in Gaza. Let the message from this conference be heard loud and clear. The killing of innocent men, women and children must end, and it must end now.
To Germany now, and a party on the political right is expected to be the biggest in at least one state of the country's regional elections. Alternative for Germany, also known as the AfD, is expected to win in Thuringia with a third of the vote. In neighbouring Saxony, the party is expected to come second. That means the anti-migrant Eurosceptic party will be the first to win first party on the right to win since the Second World War. Next, black mould and ant-infested homes. Now the Labour landlord responsible has sacked his property agent. Ilford South MP Jazz Athwell, who owns a rental portfolio of 15 homes and 3 commercial buildings in London, said he was shocked and sickened by the conditions. 2 teenagers have been arrested over the murder of a 13-year-old boy in Oldbury. West Midlands Police said the teens are being questioned in connection with the fatal stabbing in Lovett Avenue earlier this week. And finally, thunderstorm warnings across a large part of the UK as the Met Office increases alerts. Much of England, Wales and Scotland are covered by the warnings for tonight and for tomorrow. Forecasters say there's a risk of flooding. Those are the latest GB News headlines. I'll be back at 11 p.m.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Before I start this next segment, I have to read you a very funny comment on gbnews.com/yoursay from Trevor, who, referring to Keir Starmer's description of illegal migration as irregular migration, Trevor, you have said, is shoplifting now irregular shopping? It tickled me a bit in the break, so thank you for that. Anyway, good evening to you. It was revealed today that teaching unions want kids to stop learning their times tables and proper grammar at school. And in my book, that very idea is proof that our children are probably better off not going to school at all. And there's a reason homeschooling rates are exploding over recent years. I've started calling schools government indoctrination camps precisely for nonsense like this. Unions, who are now, of course, all-powerful in our new socialist Britain, say testing Year 4 children on their times tables is sparking pupil anxiety, and we should stop doing it. They also want to simplify Year 6 SATs tests, that's the exams pupils take at the end of primary school in reading, writing and maths, to cut out the most difficult grammar questions. And I can tell you now that most adults don't even know the difference between there, and not testing children on grammar would be throwing in the towel completely. But more chillingly, claptrap ideas like this, which have been dropped on the desk of Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, and that she's now actively looking at, is creating a generation of even bigger snowflake adults who couldn't even spell the word backbone, let alone brandish one. No surprise then that the number of children in England being homeschooled has increased by more than 10,000 people last autumn. Stats published by the Department for Education showed 92,000 children were recorded as being homeschooled on one day last term, and that was compared with 80,900 at the same point in autumn 2022. Cue the Education Secretary today then, who warns that parents who allow their children to regularly skip school are significantly denting their future earning potential. Well, do you know what? I'd argue that parents who regularly allow their kids to skip school for, I don't know, ventures abroad, exploring the world, sporty endeavours, or even just time with ever-absent parents will be far more beneficial to them than sitting in a classroom being mollycoddled by the state. And just like with a lot of other public institutions, trust in teachers and our education system now is rapidly falling. So instead of blaming parents, maybe the government should ask itself why parents don't want their children in schools anymore. But let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. Political commentator Chloe Dobbs, former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood, and former Labour special advisor and columnist Paul Richards. Welcome back, panel. Chloe Dobbs, 7 times 7.
49.
Yes. Theo, 10 times 4. 40. That's an easy one. Look, this is an absurd proposal from the teaching unions, is it not? Kids dropping times tables, grammar.
I mean, there is so much wrong with our education system, and to think that the cure is getting rid of times tables tests is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, to say that the reason why they want to get rid of them is because people get anxious about doing tests. Well, the way that you get rid of anxiety around doing tests is to do them more often. I mean, the secondary school that I went to, you only did mocks like in February before your GCSEs, and loads of the kids were really nervous in their actual exams, and that has a huge impact on your performance. But then the sixth form I went to, turned out all of the kids there had full, proper GCSE mocks every single summer from year 7, and they were chill as anything when it came to their GCSE exams, and that's why that school performed super well. So this is just... it's just bonkers, and it's, you know, the world's just gone soft. We're so worried about mental health that we can't even put kids through the stress of doing a times tables test.
Yeah, Paul, this idea has been dropped on the desk of Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary. Do you think she's going to seriously consider it?
Well, I've no idea, but I do know that you do need kids who can do basic maths and who can spell and use sentences. But you also know need kids who are rounded human beings, who know how to form relationships, who have emotional intelligence, who know something about the world, who can think critically. And not every kid can pass exams, and that's not what it should just be about. And I think things like times tables, I mean, I remember those books of algorithms and things that used to be given. You don't need that anymore in quite the same way.
True.
You know, do you remember the maths teachers that said, well, you won't have a calculator with you, you know, every day?
Oh, yes, I do.
And now we do, you know. So the way we use maths is going to change. And maybe times tables is something we don't really need to know in the same way. On the other hand, being able to spell, yes, we do.
But surely, Theo, times tables is just simple arithmetic. If you're in a shop and you're working out whether you can afford something, or whether you're working out you can afford your mortgage payments after Labour's, you know, whacked up, or the Bank of England rather, has whacked up interest rates, surely that is a basic element of school that you need.
I think it also goes beyond that, Ben, because I think it's also not necessarily teaching children the times table itself, but also teaching children the ability to learn something by rote, and that actually it's quite an important skill to be able to memorise some, a lot of information and be able to store that information and then be able to produce that information when you're asked to recall it at speed. And I think there's a skill set there that goes beyond the times table itself. The one thing I'd say is that, times table, I was at school, 35 years ago doing this. That tells you how old I am. And I was learning my times tables then. And anxiety amongst my peers, myself and my peers, was relatively low. It certainly wasn't as high as it is around with
I was
children
anxious
now.
when he was about to ask me a times table. He left me out, thank heavens, but I was just worried then I was going to get caught out.
The times tables have been, they're the constant with this, and it's the anxiety that's gone up. And I don't see how, if we had, 35 years ago, we had children with much lower anxiety when it came to tests, but we still had times tables, that we're now going to fast forward. We've got children with high anxiety, and you're suddenly going to take times tables out of the equation, excuse the pun, and end up in a situation where you're going to improve anxiety. I'm not quite seeing it.
I've got to say, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm sure it does with social media and stuff, which wasn't around in my day. But I was never anxious as a kid, and I don't remember any of my peers at school ever having problems with anxiety. Paul, 9 times 6.
I've no idea, but I do know that kids did have anxiety, but they didn't have the lexicon. And I think it's good that people can talk about mental health in a different way now than perhaps when we were at school, because all those problems were there, but people just didn't articulate them. So there is something around how kids should be able to talk about their feelings in that way.
Yeah, that's good. I just don't think the solution is to take away the tests altogether. I mean... No. I really, really would love to see our education system become far more vocational. I think it would make us much more productive as a country, but also it would give kids kids who are smart but not in the academic sense, the chance to feel that they've got more self-esteem, because I saw so many kids in school who clearly had some amazing talents, but not in the academic sense, and that really brought them down because they felt like their worth was measured by how many A stars that they had. I think I teach maths, and I see plenty of kids at GCSE and at GCSE level who really do not need to be learning quadratics. They're never going to use it in their life. They hate it. They're not good at maths, and I think they only really need to study maths until age 12 if they're not a mathematical genius that wants to carry it on.
Terrible.
I think maths and English, get all that right until age 12 and then bring in more vocational skills.
The other thing I'd say is that I'm not sure that ministers should be listening to trade unions when it comes to the actual curriculum itself. And the reason I say that is the trade unions are there to represent teachers. They're not there to represent the pupils. And I know the retort will come, actually, well, it's the teachers who are the experts in education. But much rather, I think, actually, the smarter thing to do would be to look for the government to figure out where are, like, the most outperforming 20 state schools in the country. Yeah. And I'm not talking about the highest achieving schools. I'm talking about the schools which are in areas of the country where they shouldn't be doing well. All the statistics when it comes to whether it's deprivation or socioeconomic groups, they shouldn't be doing well. But nonetheless, the head teachers and the directors of studies are getting extraordinary results. And I think it'd be much more sensible for Bridget Phillipson and Keir Starmer to get those 20 best head teachers into a room and start plugging them for ideas rather than listening to perhaps what the trade unions... Well, obviously they've come up with ideas. I don't doubt that they're valid, but we don't know where they're drawing those ideas from. And I think the Keir Starmer and Bridget Phillipson need to be going after excellence with this.
Well, the unions seem to run things in the early days of this Labour government, don't they? But it's an interesting conversation, especially homeschooling, the rise in homeschooling. I'm having a bit of not a row with my wife, but a discussion about, basically, long story short, my sweetheart boy Jude, he's very good at tennis, he's 4, he plays 3 or 4 times a week. I want him to have, the only time slot he can have an extra lesson in the week is on a school day, and I suggested to my wife, let's just not send him to school for that morning, just the morning, just for an hour or 2. She said, no way, absolutely no what. But my point is, if he's got a chance of being very good at tennis, what's a morning off primary school going to do for him? But anyway.
No, would be on. I mean, homeschooling is becoming much more attractive, but I think I would probably, the way the education system is at the moment, unless it changes drastically by the time I think about having kids, I would only have them if I could homeschool them. But most people don't have that opportunity because very few people have enough money for one person to stay at home.
We tried it during COVID, didn't we, Chloe? It was not a happy experience for many parents, I can tell you. It was not great.
OK, panel, thank you very much. We'll be back very shortly. But up next is sending British inmates to Estonian prisons, an inspired solution to overcrowding or a disaster waiting to happen? And is JD Vance right to say that career women choose a path to misery? Former Prisons Minister Anne Widdecombe gives her unrivalled analysis after this short break. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I'm not saying I don't want to be a mum, and I'm not saying I don't want to work, but it's definitely not easy.
It's just really tough for us mums, you know. Our job's never done, our work is never finished, and I think it's this movement, the real out-of-office movement, is something that just really resonates with me, and I think we should all talk more about how much work we do. I think a woman's work is never done, but I just think we all feel guilty. We have that mum guilt, you know. If you're working and being successful, you wish you were at home with the kids, and if you're at home, you're thinking, am I doing enough work?
Yeah, and of course the cost of childcare in this country means that a lot of families just frankly make that decision to have one of the parents stay at home, usually the mum, and they're just being squeezed out of the economy, and that's not good either.
Once you've done your job as a working mum, you come home and you're doing another 8 hours on top of it.
Mothers have a tendency, definitely historically, just to crack on with it. It's just something that they are expected to do, that they do without moaning, and now it's like...
Are we getting to a stage where always go down that well? In my experience, I have had someone say to me, well, if you can't handle it, why do you have kids? You know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, exactly that. We just need to talk about it, and I think it's healthy, and I think that's the main thing now, that we should be brave enough to be able to say, do you know what, sometimes it's difficult, but I'm really proud to be a working mum, and I tell my daughters that. I work really, really hard, and it's a good work ethic for them, you know, and that's what, you know, this campaign's all about.
Is there some resistance still, do you think, from some parts of society?
I do think there's resistance, and that's what this is about, is to try and get people talking about the fact that it has been awkward in the past, and some people don't understand a working mum's life, and that's why we need to try and talk about it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News. Now, in the wake of weeks of disorder on our streets and the Notting Hill Carnival, of course, in London, the Ministry of Justice said last week that male prisoners across England and Wales had fewer than 100 spaces left. So while that specific capacity issue has now passed, it appears that our jails are still under a huge amount of strain. Reports suggest that British prisoners could now be housed in Estonian prisons. That's as the number of prisoners in England and Wales hit a record high, with more than 88,000 in the cells. Estonia's Minister of Justice said that the country had prison cells available to rent out to NATO allies, including us. But is this really the answer to our justice woes, sending our criminals abroad? Joining me now is Reform UK spokesman and former Minister of State for Prisons, Anne Widdecombe. Anne, lovely to see you. Thank you for joining me for yet another evening. What do you make of this idea, shipping off our criminals and wrong-uns to Estonia?
Well, I mean, the real thing that comes out of all of this is that we just don't seem able to supply enough prison places. We've known for a long time that we were running out of space. Nothing new, nothing that came up this week or last week. It's been with us for a very long time. And nothing has been done about it. Neither the Tory government nor this Labour government have actually done anything. Now, shipping people off to Estonia, all well and good. I'd rather they were in jail somewhere than not in jail anywhere. But why spend money paying Estonia to house our prisoners instead of getting on with it and building the prison places ourselves?
Anne, call me naive. Why haven't we just built more prisons? What's been the problem with building prisons?
Well, I don't know, but what I do know is, and I've said this before on this programme, I went through exactly this when I was Prisons Minister. We had a huge surge in the prison population, and I didn't let people out or ask the judges not to send them to prison, and I didn't send them off to Estonia or anywhere else for that matter. concentrated on getting emergency accommodation. So we brought in a prison ship, for example. I got porta cabins from Norwegian oil rigs, put them down in the lower security prisons. I was, but the general election got in the way, proposing to take over a disused holiday camp. If you think about it, you've got all the accommodation, all you need is a secure perimeter. You take away the swimming pool and the cinema, of course, but you've got it there. And they don't seem to have that sort of imagination.
Well, they're holiday camps anyway, aren't they? Prisons most of the time. You always see these stories in the tabloids of lags playing video games and on their mobiles.
No, they're really not. Anybody who thinks prison is a holiday camp, I urgently say to them, go and see a prison and then come back and tell me it's a holiday camp. I mean, they are pretty ghastly places.
OK, I'd rather not experience prison for myself. I remember, Anne, correct me if I'm wrong, you doing a documentary some years back about, was it in Norway? Was it the world's most relaxed prison?
Yeah, the most luxurious prison it was called, and it was. It was very, very like a hotel. Now, the interesting thing is that it made a lot of claims in terms of low recidivism, but the Norwegian government didn't see fit to build another one on the same line. So you've got to ask yourself, if it really was such a success, why didn't Norway carry on and build more of the same?
Just lastly on prisons, what's Reform's policy on prisons? I mean, are you just hoping to build more if and when you get into power?
We will supply the places which the courts demand. I mean, there is a very clear division of responsibilities. It's for the courts to say who goes to prison and who doesn't. That's for the courts. It's for the government to supply the places to meet the demands of the courts. And that is what Reform will do. And if that means building more prisons, yes, of course we will build more prisons, but we'll also take emergency measures.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I reported on this programme last week about convicted child rapists being let free to walk the streets of Britain because, direct quote from the judges, he said, in any other time, you'd be going to prison, but there's no space, so off you trot. A rather dismal situation, if you ask me. Now, Anne, let me ask you about schooling. We've just spoken about it briefly in the conversation before you joined us, but Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, she's warned that parents are significantly damaging their children's future and their earning potentials by allowing them to regularly skip school. I'm pretty relaxed on this as a parent. I was just mentioned that I'd rather my boy go and practice sport for one day a week instead of going to school. Do you think I'm wrong in doing that?
Yes, I do. I think your boy should go and do some sport after school. What I would say is, if we're to make children go to school, as we always have done, and which is quite correct, we should at least make sure that the education is rigorous and vigorous and will stand them in good stead. And, saying they mustn't do spelling or mathematical tests is ridiculous.
What about truancy to kind of aid cheaper holidays, for example? Because
I mean, if you put a cheap holiday before your child's education, that says all it needs to say about your priorities as a parent.
Yeah. OK, got it. I've been told. And finally, Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, has said that women choose a path to misery, quote unquote, if they prioritise their careers over having children. Vance's comments was made in a podcast interview in September 2021, and they've been unearthed recently, including on the front page of The Observer today. And it comes, of course, as Vance labelled Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris a childless cat lady. What do you make of those comments?
Well, as a childless cat lady, first of all, the crucial thing is this. I don't think it's a question of misery if you choose a career, but what happens with an awful lot of women is that they would actually like to be full-time mothers when the children are young, or they would certainly like to at least be part-time mothers when the children are young, and they feel economically obliged to go out and work. And I think that is a question of misery. But I also think it's very, very bad from the state's point of view that we take taxes from people trying to live on one income to fund the career aspirations of those who want to live on two. And I think that is wrong.
I can't remember who it was, but somebody tweeted yesterday and I saw it and thought, oh, yeah, I support that. They said, if you have 3 or more children, you should be exempt from income tax.
A nice thought, but perhaps not a good idea, because you'd suddenly find everybody was having 3 or more children, which I don't know would be very sensible. But I think the serious point to be made in all of this is that it is quite wrong that when you've got a family where there is one wage earner that their taxes are taken to fund families where there are 2 wage earners by choice.
Yeah, it's that idea of removing income tax if you have more children would, I guess, solve the plunging birth rate problem. But yeah, a very complicated.
Create a lot more problems, I can tell you.
Yeah. All right, Anne Widdecombe, thank you for joining me. Pleasure as always. See you soon. Very good, enjoyed that. Right, up next, I'll bring you the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, which are landing thick and fast on my desk as we speak. And that's before tonight's panel offer their expert take on the stories Britain will be waking up to tomorrow. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. It stays unsettled over the next 24 hours or so. The risk of heavy showers and thunderstorms staying rather cloudy and particularly humid as well. Low pressure in charge of our weather pattern at the moment. Slow moving areas of rain across the country. However, this area of high pressure just starts to introduce some fresher air as we move through into the beginning of next week. This evening time we do have areas of showers and thunderstorms pushing north across England and Wales into southern parts of Scotland. Band of rain also starts to move in from the Atlantic to affect parts of Northern Ireland. Humid tonight, warm as well with a lot of cloud cover, temperatures in the mid to high teens. Uncomfortable for sleeping for some of us. So on Monday morning, an unsettled start to the new working week. Areas of showers pushing northwards across parts of Scotland. Some of this could lead to some local disruption first thing. Cloudy across Northern Ireland, showery outbreaks of rain here, which also extends into parts of northern England, North Wales. Some thunderstorms around. A lot of cloud, humid start to the day. Further showers and thunderstorms in places too across the rest of England and Wales. Through the day, what we'll see is it generally stays cloudy across most areas. There will be some bright or sunny spells in between, but we do have lots of bands of rain and showers pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some of this will be heavy and thundery. Could see some local disruption. Temperatures a little lower, particularly in the southeast, 25 degrees, but still rather humid for many of us. And into the evening and overnight, those showers continue. Fresher air starts to move in from the west on Tuesday, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers most frequent the further north and west you are. Here's some of them heavy. Best of the drier, brighter weather will be further south and east, and temperatures just a little lower once more. Generally dry for Wednesday ahead of further showery rain pushing in for Thursday. See you soon.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. The first newspapers have dropped on my desk. We'll start with the Daily Mail. Labour is scaring off big business. A sudden collapse in confidence over UK economy. Survey of bosses reveals as tax rises and workplace reform loom. Yeah, the 4-day working week may have something to do with that. Moving on to the Daily Telegraph. One-word Ofsted ratings scrapped. The government's immediate overhaul throws reports into limbo after union pressure. So if you're not familiar, schools and nurseries and so on, they have a rating of either good, outstanding, poor or needs improvement, something like that. But apparently that's going to be scrapped. Also, James Cleverly, the Tory leadership contender, said he will end stamp duty. Nice idea, but... yeah, don't think that will happen for a while. Daily Mirror says race hate surge in schools, calls for action after 25% rise in kids sent home for racist behaviour. That's almost 60 children a day apparently suspended from school for racism last year. A nice picture of Davina McCall. My new dating series brought me to tears. Love it. Love you, Davina. The Independent, eyewitnesses behind the enemy lines with Zelensky's forces, a special dispatch from the front line in Ukraine. The Metro, grade big U-turn on schools. Again, that Ofsted story, scrapping the grading. And that comes in the wake, actually, of the death of head teacher Ruth Perry, whose school was to be downgraded as inadequate. And I believe, as far as I remember, she unfortunately took her own life shortly after that. And the Daily Express, ludicrous, it says. Labour axed winter fuel help to stop run on the pound. Labour's been derided for a desperate attempt to defend axing winter fuel payments by insisting it would help prevent a run on the pound. The claims were that, the pound would collapse if they didn't do it. I don't really believe it, to be honest. Don't believe it. I'm joined back by my panel now, Chloe, Theo, and Paul. I was about to call you James. Sorry, Paul Richards. Right, shall we start with what takes your fancy? What about the Labour confidence, the big business confidence? Labour's scaring off big businesses, sudden collapse in confidence over the UK economy. Not only are they scaring off high net contributors to the economy, Chloe Dobbs, they are scaring off big business.
Yeah, I think that this is understandable given that Labour very, very quickly have started U-turning on things that they said before the election. I mean, they made it out that they're going to fix all the country's problems, they're not going to raise your taxes, they're not going to cut winter fuel allowance, and very, very quickly they started U-turning on things. So I think that they are making themselves known as a government that cannot be trusted. So no wonder they're scaring off big business. And they're saying we need to restore the foundations of our economy, as Keir Starmer had on his, it's not a very good slogan, where he was standing in the garden giving his speech. And he thinks that the way to do that is raising taxes in the budget that they say will be painful. But we've had, I think it's 9,500 millionaires leave the country in 1 year, which that's just second to China, the number of millionaires leaving in 1 year. We're just going to scare off more and more people. You've got loads of people paying over 50% tax, basically, and the country's not working. They don't feel the streets are safe. They're not getting any value for money. And so they're all just buggering off to other countries.
I'm laughing because Paul's head shakes and sort of eyebrow raises. You haven't seen it on off camera, but every time Chloe speaks, I get a head shake from Paul.
I'm shuddering is what I'm doing. Well, look, it's a Labour government committed to get the fastest growth rate in the G7. That's going to involve an awful lot of investment. It's going to involve an awful lot of opportunities for business, particularly green businesses. There's going to be huge investment in these jobs and apprenticeships and businesses' success, including small and medium enterprises. I don't know where this story is coming from in the Daily Mail, but, I mean, what is the source for this sudden collapse?
It's a load of clobbers.
This survey. It's nonsense. I think people are seeing Britain is open for business. I think Labour's economic plans are going to be good for business.
Can I politely say, Labour have inherited a raft of economic gifts. So the last 6 months... Economic gifts, yeah.
Right.
The last 6 months of GDP figures were the best in 7 years. They vastly outperformed Germany, anyone else on the continent. Labour have come into power with interest rates going down. In turn, mortgage payments going down. Winter fuel bills were going down before it appears Miliband cocked it up. But they have had a raft of economic gifts, which they now seem to be doing their best to spaff up the wall, as Boris Johnson would say.
Well, I think the underlying fundamentals of the economy are pretty dire, and there's this enormous black hole, let's not forget, that wasn't being revealed before the election. We knew things were dire, but not this bad. It does raise the question of why Sunak had the election when he did, by the way, because he could have then capitalised on some of these headlines over the last 3 months. Historians will have to debate that particular one. But I don't think it's a golden economic inheritance. I think there's some pretty big problems with the economy, which is why the sort of rhetoric coming out of Labour about, things can get worse before they can get better, I think is the right approach.
I think that there are two parts to this front page on the Daily Mail. Firstly, there's the workers' rights package that we don't actually know what's going to be in there. But given what was trailed in that election campaign, particularly around day one rights when it comes to unfair dismissal, sick pay, parental leave, and of course now this onus that's going to be on employers to find a reason why they shouldn't provide an applicant for a four-day working week. I think there is going to be pressure on businesses that they will not necessarily like. That's not to say it won't work, because I think in many cases, I think particularly around a 4-day working week, I think that's probably actually quite a good idea. But nevertheless, there will be some opposition amongst business leaders when it comes to that. And then secondly, of course, we're looking at the budget on October the 30th. And of course, Keir Starmer has ruled out any rise in VAT, income tax or national insurance contribution.
It's going to be capital gains tax, isn't it?
But there are potentially going to be there are going to be some tax rises that may well hit big business. So there is still some, if businesses are feeling jittery, then it is perhaps understandable.
Honestly, this mooted idea, which probably will happen, of hiking capital gains tax from 20% on the top rate to 45% is outrageous. I mean, for me, it's a legalised mafia coming along and saying, thank you for your endeavour and your intelligence and your risk of using money that's already been taxed. We're going to take nearly half of that. I really think it's outrageous. I think it's an abomination.
Well, save your outrage till the budget. You don't even know what's in the budget yet.
Of course, it will be that. It will be inheritance tax and it will be capital gains tax, because we know Labour is the party of envy and jealousy, and aspiration nation is no longer. Paul, do you agree with that?
Well, funnily enough, no, I don't. I think the budget will be hard. I think it'll be tough because of the economic legacy I described earlier. But I think there are things in there that people can get behind. And, we all want a safer, better country. So more police, for example, people will welcome.
OK, right. Whoever's to blame for this £20 billion black hole, right, why don't you start by not giving £11 billion in climate aid? That's half of it.
Well, because we'll all end up drowning in our own filth, won't we, if we don't do something about the climate?
I think we already are with the sewage releases into our waterways. No, but honestly, serious point. £11 billion to climate aid. You're giving £3 billion a year to Ukraine until the job is done, which could be an endless.
I think that's one of the most important things we can do. And the most important institution in my life right now is the Ukrainian army, and they have to succeed in that. Otherwise, that will shape our geopolitics for the next 50 years.
Why is that?
Well, otherwise dictators will invade other countries with impunity. That's why.
But Ukraine's not a member of NATO, so why don't we just wait? I mean, I'm not a military expert. I'm just playing devil's advocate. But why don't we just wait until?
Well, because if they succeed,
the argument is they'll then go on to Poland, right, and start invading NATO territory.
Moldova and then Estonia.
So why don't you wait until they attack a NATO ally?
Well, because why would we wait for that? Why would they be allowed to get away with invading Ukraine? That's
because we can't afford it.
Absolutely horrific point of view. I mean, we've got to stop him in his tracks.
Yeah, OK.
And shove them out of Ukraine. I mean, that's the most important battle going on in the world right now.
Got it. Should we move on to another story? The Daily Telegraph have one at the top which says why we should all be eating muesli, but I won't do that one. We can do the Daily Mirror, which is an exclusive race hate surge in schools. Almost 60 children a day were suspended from school for racism last year. Call for action after 25% rise in kids sent home for racist behaviour. Chloe.
So this is interesting. I think that this could be two things, one or both, and I don't know. I'm not on the ground there in the schools. It could be the case that what teachers are calling racism is now becoming much wider, right? So just as we get called racist for talking about immigration, is it the case that a kid in school that raises a concern about immigration is being sent home for being racist? Or, it could be one or both of the fact that I do really think that we still have a lingering issue with kids not having the socialisation that they needed during COVID times at a key part of their development. They haven't learned how to talk to other people politely, how to disagree properly, how to have good debates with people. And hence you often end up with kids who they don't know how to talk to each other properly in a respectful way.
But where do they learn to become racist? I mean, there's a difference between being polite and being...
I think...
No, you finish.
I think a lot of the time, if kids are sent home for... When kids say something offensive and they use the wrong words and they use the wrong language, I think sometimes you have to give them a bit of a benefit of the doubt, because often, clearly what they've said is wrong, but they don't completely understand what they're saying. They're still learning what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
Kids make silly mistakes all of the time.
OK. Theo, what were you going to say?
We're just going off 3 paragraphs on the front and of the Daily Mirror, and it's obviously, it looks like it's a freedom of information request. I mean, the numbers are worrying, but we don't know what's behind them. But the insinuation, it seems to be, from the Daily Mirror, and I may be reading this wrong, but, if you have more racism in society, and then kids are picking it up and they're taking it with them into the playground, and that's got to be a worrying trend. But as I said, we're only dealing with four.
I mean,
it'd be interesting to know what teachers are saying, or if there's anything to sort of back up, or anybody with more expertise than me has any reason as to why this might be happening.
I wonder, Paul, though, if we are changing, or the definition of racism is changing over the years.
I mean, Chloe's point is a good one around teaching kids how to express ideas, debate, talk in ways that are respectful, but not think that some, things are sort of off-piste and you can't mention it, whatever. That's important. But if kids are just genuinely, racially abusing somebody in the playground, then they should be stamped on.
I think a lot of people are observing that kids are just more feral these days. They're not parented properly. They're not given proper discipline by their parents. And I think, especially when I talk to older people who have seen more generations grow up than I have, they feel like today's children are far more disciplined. I mean, you're a parent, you'll probably know far better than I.
Well, I mean, I got onto a train the other day to come to London, and there were a bunch of, 10, 11, 12-year-olds down in the first-class carriage just smashing the place up, swearing, playing music on their phones. I thought, oh, my God, I need to start cycling to work or something. But yeah, they're definitely. I've definitely noticed they're becoming more feral. Look, let me show you this. I thought it was funny, and then actually I thought it was a rather well done piece by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So he went to visit some steelworkers for a media opportunity, but then got a bit more than he bargained for with one of the workers. Take a look at this.
Donuts over here if you want to thank you for your hard work.
I can bring some for my kids here.
Okay. The 25% tariffs we just brought in on Chinese skills to help you out.
That's going to keep my job, yeah.
That's going to keep your job.
What about the 40% taxes I'm paying, and I don't have a doctor?
The $400 million in investing in the card means you're going to have a job for
I think you're only here for another year. We won't see you around probably another year.
Well, that's what elections are for.
That's right.
And I look forward to everyone exercising the right to vote.
Yep.
And the basic choice. We're going to invest in you and your job.
I don't believe you for a second.
Dental care? Do you know anyone who got dental care?
Yeah, I pay for it myself.
Okay.
We're like 3 years behind.
You have a job and coverage?
Yeah, four people in my family.
We've got
every time we go for a dental visit, it's costing me about $50 in my pocket per person.
Okay.
Why? I have a good job. You're not really doing anything for us, Justin.
Well, actually, we just invested so 500,000 people who hadn't been to the dentist got to go to the dentist over the past few months.
Probably like my neighbor that doesn't go to work because she's lazy.
Well, you know what?
Doesn't go to work. She lives the same life I do.
Most Canadians try to stick up for each other, and that's what we're going to keep doing.
Yeah.
Good luck and prepare you for that, sir.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
Have a nice day.
Have a good day, sir. All right. The other guys got the donuts. Excellent.
They got the donuts. Excellent. Now, look, I'm not a Justin Trudeau fan, Paul, but I think something similar happened to Sadiq Khan some months or years ago in the UK, and Khan walked off. So, although I'm not a Trudeau fan, he did stand there, he did engage and try and have a conversation, to his credit.
I mean, politicians are terrified of this kind of doorstep encounter, aren't they? And Tony Blair famously outside the hospital in Birmingham, and there's the Mrs. Duffy incident with Gordon Brown, which then he revealed his true feelings on because he kept the microphone on like a fool. But they have to just stand there and take it. They can't be seen to be being rude or aggressive or walking away or dismissing the voter, because that then becomes the viral clip. So they have to just sit there and take it. And I thought actually he did quite well.
Yeah, I think he did it right. Chloe, could you imagine Keir Starmer doing that?
I mean, I think Keir Starmer would probably do similar, i.e. keep making the same point and not actually responding to what the voter was saying. When the voter was making key points there, but I pay all of this tax, I don't have a doctor, I don't have a dentist, and I'm sure many people in the UK can relate. They pay tons of tax and they can't get a doctor's appointment. You've got people in this country pulling out their own teeth because they can't get a dentist appointment, right? And he just kept saying, no, we've invested in your industry, we've invested in your industry. He just kept making the same point over and over, a typical politician.
Theo, I reckon Starmer would have done a runner.
Well, who knows what Keir Starmer would have done? What I think is actually it's the fundamentals, isn't it? It's this guy, this worker. He's got a good, blue-collar job in Canada. He's confronted the Prime Minister, and it's the fundamentals that actually, at the moment, in Western democracies, having a good job just isn't enough.
No.
It's just not enough. And there is an underlying dissatisfaction with the deal that working people have, whether it be in the UK or in Canada or in the States. And that's what leaves open the door to people like Donald Trump.
Yeah, I was speaking to my grandma the other day. She was reminding me of the times when the husband went out to work. You only needed one person to work in the household, and that was enough to take care of the kids, the household, the wife. But not today, obviously. Panel, thank you. You'll be back in just a tick for more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And I bring you another interesting video, to say the least. It's truly unhinged, actually. It's a clip from Extinction Rebellion, and I'll also crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. This is Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
John Steinbeck once said of his 1939 novel The Grapes of Wrath that he intended to rip a reader's nerves to rags. Well, GB News sent its famously delicate Stephan Kyriazis to see an adaptation of the work in a London theatre, and somehow he's made it into the studio today. Give people a tiny background about The Grapes of Wrath. It's about the Depression, isn't it?
Yes, it's the Great Plains, which were absolutely ravaged by droughts. They'd completely overfarmed the topsoil, so they had all these huge dust storms, and basically the farms were worthless. So they reckon in the 1930s, about 3.5 million people left this huge central agrarian area of America, and this is a very poor, white working region. Often, many of them headed for the coast to California to this dream of orange groves, white houses, plentiful work. And we focus in on the Joad family, very poor, very working class. Tom Joad has just got out of prison for homicide in self-defence, and he's played by one of the Treadaways, Luke Treadaway, who I confused with his twin Harry.
Understandably.
They are identical. And so they pack everything into this kind of old-fashioned jalopy. It's a bit like Beverly Hillbillies, but not humorous. And I think there's about 13 people crammed, hanging off the sides, and they embark on this odyssey across the country. So there's all these huge themes about migration, about prejudice. They are viewed as an underclass by other Americans. So although they're migrants, they're not quite immigrants, but they're treated very poorly, as almost subhuman. When they get there, the dream turns out to be false, the pay is terrible, and then very often when they take the job the next day, the pay is halved. It's a terrible life.
It's a very angry novel.
It's an angry, dark novel.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Ben Leo tonight. More newspaper front pages have just dropped hot off the press. The Guardian leads with protesters turn on Netanyahu in fury over deaths of 6 hostages. Those scenes tonight from Israel. Thousands of protesters taking to the streets of the likes of Tel Aviv. Water cannons used, all demanding Netanyahu resigns following the outrage over those 6 the 6 hostages who were murdered by Hamas in the tunnels of Gaza. And just down the bottom, I touched on it at the top of the show, this is the Guardian's headline, the German far right hails historic success in votes. And similarly with the Times, Germany's far right has first big win since the Nazis. The Alternative for Germany party sweeps to victory in the eastern region. Shall we kick off with that, Chloe Dobbs? I mean, these newspapers are calling it the far right. Some would just say they're just right-wing. But either way, a rise and a rejection of open border policies in Germany.
I mean, I'm no expert on the AfD. I don't know all of their policies, and whether they deserve the label of far right or not, I do not know. But what I will say is that this is absolutely no surprise, right? They are just flooding Europe with illegal migrants. We've had in Germany far better transparency on the figures in terms of crime than we've had released here in the UK, and you've seen that illegal migrants in Germany are far, far more likely to commit crimes. They're having huge trouble there. So how can anyone be surprised by this?
Paul, it's interesting, isn't it? The UK seems to be going ever more left, a lurch to the left, as they like to call it, but yet Europe, and Germany at least, seems to be lurching to the right.
This is quite worrying, actually, because, I mean, the German constitution was devised to avoid ever the same happening again that happened in the 30s. And there are echoes of that in this election victory. They do have checks and balances within the system, so they're not going to form a government, but they can, within this state, you know, cause trouble for the existing parties. But more importantly is why do people feel the need to vote for these populist, anti-immigrant, you know, hate-filled kind of parties? You know, what's going wrong with our democracy?
Paul,
it's not just Germany, it's all over the world, isn't it?
OK, is it hate-filled to want to control your borders?
Everyone wants to control their borders.
So what's hate-filled about that?
But it's the way that the rhetoric is framed, that it's the othering of people, it's blaming things on certain groups. In every different bit of Europe, it's a different group that gets blamed. But the idea of populism and that, you know, we're the people and these others are responsible for your ills is a very dangerous narrative. And it does have echoes of the Nazis, as the front page suggests.
Theo, is this not just democracy in action?
Well, look, it's a trend, isn't it? We saw how close Marine Le Pen came, obviously, in those parliamentary elections, and there had to be a sort of organising of the left in order to shut out National Rally. We've obviously seen what's happened in Italy, where actually Giorgia Meloni has taken power. And we've also seen in this country how well Nigel Farage has done Reform UK. I mean, obviously, Labour secured a majority of north of 170, but you know, Nigel Farage and Reform UK split the Conservative vote. And I think if you look at the trends that it's seeing in this country, I think Reform are probably going to do well, you know, the same or equally as, you know, or even better at the next general election, depending on how the party grows. So it's a trend we're seeing right across Europe.
OK, who would have guessed people don't like open borders? Surprise, surprise. Anyway, let me show you this clip from Extinction Rebellion. So one of the protesters has mimicked the press. I'll play you the clip, it speaks for itself.
No such thing as the free press anymore. The dirty fossil fuel industry pays me to lie to everybody. Give me your dirty money and I will convince you to even drink oil. Give it to your children. Who cares about free press when you can buy it with dirty money?
I think she's had a few too many shandies. But anyway, time now for today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Chloe, who is your Greatest Britain tonight?
It's going to be Jeremy Clarkson for banning Keir Starmer from his new pub, which I thought was absolutely brilliant.
Theo, your GB?
Tony Gregory-Thompson, I thought the way she spoke about, had the courage to speak about her ordeal of having to crawl off a train, took immense bravery, and I think you only get changed by speaking out about things like this, and fair play to her. I think it's a fantastic thing to do, and it's taken a lot of courage to do it.
Good shout. Paul?
It's got to be Angela Rayner, putting the party in the Labour Party.
Oh, Paul, this came the day after Starmer's doom-laden speech saying
she's allowed to have a holiday, and she's in Ibiza raving. She's the raving grandma. Good for her.
Do you not think it was a bit tone-deaf?
I think she's entitled to a holiday, and I think a lot of Britons are in Ibiza enjoying themselves just like our Deputy Prime Minister.
Michael Gove did this, right? And
it wasn't quite as cool as that, though, was it? He looked terrible. He was still wearing a suit, for heaven's sake. At least she's enjoying herself.
Maybe so, but Michael Gove did it, and you're like slammed him for going on holiday at a time when people were struggling. Anyway, today's GB, Tanny Gray is going to a very worthy nomination, but it's going to be Jeremy Clarkson, unfortunately, because anyone who bans Starmer from their pub is a Greatest Britain to me. Chloe Tubbs, who's your Union Jackass?
It's Jess Phillips for gloating about the fact that she was given the fast track at the hospital, it would seem.
Why did she do that?
Her stance on Gaza. Apparently that meant that the doctor liked her. She says a lot of the doctors there are Muslim and Palestinians, and they knew that she's pro-Gaza, so they basically let her jump the queue.
Oh, not sure why Jess would do that. A bit politically naive. Theo, your Union Jackass?
Ticketmaster,
oh, yeah.
Because, of course, they inflated the prices for the Oasis concert. I just think if you're going to have a reunion of one of the the greatest bands of the last, 40 years, 30, 40 years. You've got to do it properly, and you can't have the whole thing, inflated prices.
Some Labour MPs suggested nationalising Ticketmaster. Paul, your Union Jackass.
Well, it's a bit of a serious one, really, but it's the Taliban for trying to erase women from public life in that country by not even letting them speak in public. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace. We need to keep the eyes of the world on this.
Yeah, but it's going to be the Taliban, of course. Yeah, I mean, good. We've wasted 20 years in Afghanistan, and Joe Biden's evacuation from Afghanistan was a stain on America. And it's long been argued as well that that botched evacuation sparks Putin's inspiration for taking Ukraine, and of course China eyeing up Taiwan as well. So of course it's going to be the Taliban. Chloe, Theo, Paul, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you at home for joining me, and of course, over this past 4 weeks. That's me done now. Mark Dolan's back next week. He's had a long holiday, which I'm sure he's enjoyed very much. Not sure if he's got a tan. Up next, it's Headliners. I'm back on Wednesday night covering for Patrick. Thank you and good night. Here's your weather with Greg.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. It stays unsettled over the next 24 hours or so. The risk of heavy showers and thunderstorms staying rather cloudy and particularly humid as well. Low pressure in charge of our weather pattern at the moment. Slow moving areas of rain across the country. However, this area of high pressure just starts to introduce some fresher air as we move through into the beginning of next week. This evening time we do have areas of showers and thunderstorms pushing north across England and Wales into southern parts of Scotland. Band of rain also starts to move in from the Atlantic to affect parts of Northern Ireland. Humid tonight, warm as well with a lot of cloud cover, temperatures in the mid to high teens. Uncomfortable for sleeping for some of us. So on Monday morning, an unsettled start to the new working week. Areas of showers pushing northwards across parts of Scotland. Some of this could lead to some local disruption first thing. Cloudy across Northern Ireland, showery outbreaks of rain here, which also extends into parts of northern England, North Wales. Some thunderstorms around. A lot of cloud, humid start to the day. Further showers and thunderstorms in places too across the rest of England and Wales. Through the day, what we'll see is it generally stays cloudy across most areas. There will be some bright or sunny spells in between, but we do have lots of bands of rain and showers pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some of this will be heavy and thundery. Could see some local disruption. Temperatures a little lower, particularly in the southeast, 25 degrees, but still rather humid for many of us. And into the evening and overnight, those showers continue. Fresher air starts to move in from the west on Tuesday, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers most frequent the further north and west you are. Here's some of them heavy. Best of the drier, brighter weather will be further south and east, and temperatures just a little lower once more. Generally dry for Wednesday ahead of further showery rain pushing in for Thursday. See you soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good luck. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Top gear to top beer. See what we did there. Jeremy Clarkson. Hundreds of people had been queuing to be some of the first punters inside Jeremy Clarkson's new pub in Oxfordshire. It's called the Farmer's Dog, and it opened to the public at midday yesterday. Now, I mean, this is it's called the Farmer's Dog, and it's just outside of Burford, just off the A40. Jeremy Clarkson brought it with him, and yesterday there was a 4-hour queue for a pint at the newly opened bar. The serious point of this story, and what, to be fair, Clarkson's doing, is like he's done with his farm, Did You Squat Farm, which has been a very popular TV series. He's actually promoting the British pub. Jonathan, we know they're closing at a rate of knots in this country. Because this is Jeremy Clarkson's comment on why Sir Keir Starmer is banned. They're a hopeless bunch. Starmer hasn't done much to endear himself to me yet. Well, have a look at farming. It might turn around. You never know. So, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the political point here, David, isn't it? It's like, you know, Jeremy Clarkson has raised, the issues of farmers in this country and how much of a struggle it is for them. And he's now doing the same for the pub trade. So there's a serious point to what Clarkson's doing.
Absolutely. I mean, these are two things which are part of our heritage: pubs and farms.
You're talking about farming. We do need to talk about farming actually, and what Brexit has done for farming. Not only what Brexit has done for farming, and now you have the government negotiating trade deals with countries, and the main things those countries want are better access for their meat in this country.
Absolutely not. It's not Brexit that is destroying farmers in this country. It is what the government have done, both under Johnson and Sunak, and now Starmer continuing this, in actually making farm subsidies related to the whole green agenda.
So we start off with a nice friendly chit-chat about a pub and straight on to the B word.
I never talk about Dawn, I never talk about Brexit anymore.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Will Hollis in the GB News newsroom. Protests in Israel as thousands of people in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem fill the streets after the killing of 6 hostages in Gaza. Protesters blocked roads while police used water cannons to disperse crowds. IDF soldiers recovered the bodies of the hostages, who Israel says were killed moments before troops reached them. The Hostages Families Forum, which represents relatives of those held in Gaza, blame the deaths on Prime Minister Netanyahu's failure to secure a deal with Hamas. Back in the UK, the leader of the SNP has been speaking on the final day of the party's conference in Edinburgh. The keynote speech by Scotland's